everyone! Today we'll be programming together a multi-pick application with the Robotiq Palletizing Solution. Before we start getting into the programming, however, we'll look at the setup you'll need that will be different from a regular palletizing solution. First off, you'll need an additional box sensor. So in the setup, I have my first box sensor to tell me when I have one box, and a second box sensor that's far enough so that it won't be triggered with only one box, but we'll be able to see when a second box is available for the robot. Then I made sure to connect those two box sensors to my UR controller, and I went into my installation and made sure to name them so that it'd be easier down the line when I start programming. As well, you'll see that in my digital output, I've also given names to each of my grippers and to my conveyor to, again, make it easier to program. Next, you'll need a way to combine the signals from both box sensors into a single signal. Why? Because that's the signal the robot needs in order to be able to know when two boxes are available. There's different ways to do this. What we suggest, it only requires one single jumper wire. And what you'll do is you'll plug that jumper wire between an available digital output and an available digital input. And this digital input will be used as the signal to tell the robot two boxes are ready to be picked. Additionally, as you'll see in my screen, I've created a separate threads that will activate the digital output when both the box sensor 1 and the box sensor 2 are at high. And that's it. Now we have the box sensor 1 that will tell the robot when only one box is available, and we'll have this digital input 3 to tell the robot when both signals on the box sensor have been activated. Now that the setup is ready to go, we'll get into the programming. And I'll show you on my screen the different steps I go through. So first, we'll start by adding a palletizing node. And then the first thing you'll need to do is actually activate the multi-pick setting. So I'll go into my settings, and just here you'll see allow multiple box types, different boxes or box groups. So I'll check that, and as you can see, a new menu appears. We won't touch this one just yet. Instead, we'll go and define the two different boxes that needs to be picked by the robot. So I'll come over here at the box section. And right away, one main difference from the single pick palletizing application is that you are asked what box type do you want to pick. So in this case, a box type can be one box, can be two boxes, could be two different boxes of different size. The main idea is that you're defining what does the group that the robot needs to pick, what's the size of this group, and that is called a box type. So what we'll do is we'll have one box type that's going to be a single box, and we're going to define one box type that's going to be a double box. And we'll program from here. So when you're programming your single box, very similar to how you would do it with a regular palletizing application. So I'll make sure to put the dimensions of my box here as I've measured beforehand. Add the payload, and then set the grip position. All right, let's look on how to teach a proper pick position. This is key because it will bring a lot more accuracy on your pattern when the robot picks the box and put it down. If you're just off a little bit, then you'll see your box might not be quite exactly where you want it to be. So in order to do that, I'll make sure my gripper is parallel to the ground, and then make sure it's aligned with the boxes, and then that it's properly centered. And one important factor before we start moving the robot is I've placed my two grippers at the same distance as the center of my two boxes. If I had more boxes and more grippers, then I'd have to keep that same logic, that when the grippers are both on the box, they should both be at the center of each box. So now let's reorient our grippers. So using active drive, I'm gonna make sure I'm flat like this. Then I'll go into 4 degrees of freedom and align the cups of the gripper with the side of the box. So if ever my conveyor was in parallel, well, I'd still have my gripper parallel to the boxes, just like that. Right, now that it's properly aligned, I'll change my number of degrees of freedom to 3 so that we keep this orientation. And I'll bring the whole tool over the 2 of the boxes. So let's look at that like this here. Make sure we're quite centered. I have the tape to help me really get at the center of this box. All right, this looks good. You can also take out the measuring tape to make sure it's really precise. As I've told you, this will add accuracy to your box positioning. And once those are in place, then I'll finish it off before teaching by compressing, making sure both of my cups on each gripper are quite compressed. And this makes sure we have a proper grip every single time. All right, this looks like a good position. I'm ready to press set and save it in my box type right here. So my grip position is in place. And so my first box type is ready to go. Now, when I get to the double box, the difference here, I have the same width. However, I have double the length. And so we're gonna add this extra length here. The height stays the same, and the payload doubles because we have double the boxes. And then the grip position will be the same as the single pick in this particular case. All right, so my 2 type box are defined. So now I'll go back into the settings and I'll complete the details from the menu that popped up. So first off, for my single box, what's my box presence input? We said it was the first box detector here, so I'll leave it to the digital input 0. Box center offset from TCP. My TCP right now is the center right here because I'm basing it off the whole tool set I have at the end of the robot. But when I'm picking only one box, that TCP is moved above the center of the single box I'm picking. And that center would be half the size of my box. So that's what I'm gonna do in the Y direction, in the positive, it's the way I have placed my gripper. And I'll add half the size of my box, which was 410 millimeters. Perfect. And we recommend that you define your conveyor to avoid collisions. Now we'll go to the menu for the double box. In this case, the box presence input is the digital input that's connected to the jumper wire, like we talked into the thread. So that will be my digital input 3. And the box center, there's no box center offset because the TCP I have for my tool is the same when I'm picking 2 boxes. We'll as well configure the conveyor in this case. And that's it for the settings. Now we'll define our pallet, and that's very similar to what you do with a regular palletizing application. So nothing new here. The size are already good, and I'm gonna palletize only on the left in this presentation. Now let's go to the pattern, because that's the other place where you'll see how it changes because you're doing a multipick application. So in this pattern, you see this rolling down menu that allows me to pick which type of box I want to add on my pattern. So if I start with the double box, I'll add it here, maybe turn it around. And what's interesting to look over here is that depending on which box type you select, you see that the similar box type are put in color, whereas the other ones are grayed out. So here I can see my double box is in blue, whereas if I go back to my single box, my double box gets grayed out and my single box are turned blue at that point. This can be very useful if you want to get an idea quickly on your pattern, how many double box you have. All right, if you want, you can right away add another pattern as your second layer. You can modify the number of layers you want. You can edit the layer sequence you have. For now, we'll just keep it to one layer in this demonstration. All right, so your box types have been defined. Your pallet has been defined, your pattern has been set up, and you've told the robot what signal means that there's one box ready and what signal means that there's two boxes ready. Your application only has two things left to complete: the instruction for the grip and the instruction for the release. So in the grip position, because we have two grippers, we only want one gripper to be activated when we're picking one box, and we want both grippers to be activated when we're picking two boxes. To make this difference, we're going to go into the advanced options here and bring an if statement. In that if statement, we're going to use a function that's called get current box type. So this script allows you to know which box type is currently ready to be gripped. And what I'll do is I'll say when I'm picking a double box, then both of my grippers are going to be activated. If we're not picking a double box, in this case, we'll just activate one gripper. I'll go ahead and program that sequence. So the name of my box type, which is double box. The condition, is it the same as the box that needs to be picked right now? And then the action. If it is a double box we need to pick, then I'll make sure that my gripper 1 is activated, and I'll make sure that my gripper 2 is activated. Else, and in this case, because we only have two options, I'm just using an else, but if you had more, you could use an else if and add to your conditions. Else, I'm just going to activate one gripper, and in this case, I know it's the gripper 2. Grip conditions are set, we'll finish with the release, and in that case, it's pretty simple. Whether you have one box or two boxes, you just want to cut the air that's going to the gripper. So I'm going to send the same information for one gripper and the other, and just turn them off. All right. We can see that all the information has been filled up on the left. There's no more yellow lines left. So we're ready to test the application.